Welcome to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, the show dedicated to focusing on the truth that is always evolving within us and around us, where we explore the potentiality of truth as a highly esteemed value at a time in history when most people have more on their plates than any one human should. This podcast aims to cut through the noise, the ignorance, and the complexity of 21st century living by exploring the truths of a diverse range of incredible voices. From authors, artists, creatives, and educators to activists, speakers, and those in various scientific and esoteric fields, our guests hail from cultures and countries all over the world. On Mondays, we post interviews, and on Sundays, we post sermons, which are more personal and revolve around whatever I'm musing on that week. No episode of this show is meant for everyone, and every episode is meant for whoever needs it on the right day at the right time, and you never know when that might be for you. Not all guest views will reflect my own, and that's intentional. We don't learn, grow, heal, or improve by staying in our comfortable bubbles with all of our people who look, think, or live exactly how we do. In this show, you'll get the full range. Everything from health, communication, money, success, parenting, desire, and spirituality, to making pivots and transitions in life, and topics related to psychology, storytelling, gender and race issues, emotional intelligence, and sacred activism. We can learn a lot from each other, and we need each other. You can expect courageous conversations when you tune into the show that will range from insightful, uplifting, and illuminating to uncomfortable and sometimes even confrontational. But no matter what, they'll always be filled with compassion and curiosity. Each episode invites you, with a ton of love and respect, to listen with your heart and mind wide open. If you love what you hear or find it useful and inspiring, the best way to show your appreciation is to share the episode and subscribe. Thank you so much for listening, and now for today's show. This is episode number 237 of Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, and I'm pleased to introduce our first ever musician to the show today. This is Trevor Hall. Trevor's big truth was threefold: not trying to figure it all out, being comfortable with the unknown, and surrendering into that space. In this episode, we talk about his most recent album, The Fruitful Darkness, and how he released it, which was both innovative and unconventional. We got into his path as a professional musician, which was fascinating to me. He signed a record deal at 18 and produced 2 albums in 4 years that never saw the light of day. I didn't even know that was possible. We talked about the meaning of the new album title, The Fruitful Darkness. We got into some of his favorite artists and tours that he's been on, as well as how music breaks down walls and barriers in his experience. We also kept it real and geeked out on the end at all the types of TV shows we like to watch that people would probably not think we watch. So if you want to know more about Trevor, if you want to check out links to anything we mentioned in the show, head on over to untameyourself.com/T as in truth, T as in telling -237. Again, that's untameyourself.com/TT-237. What's up, everyone? I am so excited for this interview today. You all know how much I love to geek out on creative process with people who do a variety of creative things. So we have Trevor Hall with us today. And I think this might be our first musician in almost 3 years of the podcast. So welcome.
Wow, thank you.
Yeah. So the first question I ask everyone, since this is Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto, is what is a truth that's having a really big impact on your life right now?
Truth that's having a big impact on my life right now. It's hard to say. I think just living in truth is an obvious theme. But I think for me right now, the biggest truth right now is coming into the space within myself of being comfortable with not knowing, and that surrender of not trying to figure it all out and surrendering to that greater force or power within our lives and trying to live in that space and live your life from that space is quite a practice and quite a lesson that's been coming up, especially the last couple of years. So that's kind of the theme of my life, I guess, at the moment.
So what does that look for you practically. So when you need to surrender, I mean, what's
Yeah.
going on and how do you respond?
Well, when I look back on my life in the last couple of years and thinking about this lesson, this truth, um, I've had some kind of difficult times the last couple of years, and I think when we have those times, we tend to, want to fix them immediately, or we ask ourselves questions: why is this happening to me right now, or this type of dialogue. But as time goes on, I look back and I see that those moments of hardship or struggle or darkness were really blessings in disguise, and my greatest lessons lied in me turning and facing them and not pushing them away, and kind of surrendering to that space that everything is, in a practical sense, like you're talking about, everything is being arranged. Every moment, every meeting, every person that we come in contact is being arranged. That's my belief that I'm stepping into. And so usually when I find myself getting tight or getting like stressed out or something like this, if I can slip into my observer, I can see it's just me wanting to like hold on to control.
Yeah.
When as time goes on in my life, I'm still really young, but as time goes on, I'm not in control. There's certain things I am in control of, my character and how I act like this, but in the greater sense of things, I'm not in control. So that kind of constantly trying to get into my awareness, which is probably, watching my breath and just looking at this situation from a neutral place, that allows me to let go and surrender and understand that there's something greater being worked out.
Yeah. So are there things, and you can pass on this question if you want because it's personal, but are there certain things that right now are harder for you to do that with than others?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just thinking of all the funny things that I have trouble doing. Some things have to do with, or a lot of it has to do with, career, and being an artist and really, putting forth your best self in your work and stuff, but not being entitled to the fruits, of those actions. And no matter how hard, no matter where you think you need to be or, where you want to be, that's sometimes really difficult for me because I have an idea of maybe like where I should be or why aren't I here yet, And all that's doing is just taking me out of the present moment and me not being grateful for where I am and like all the stuff that's already happened. I can get caught in that dialogue pretty easily. That's one that's kind of tough for me, but it's just an opportunity again to surrender into the present moment and the space. But that's probably my hardest one, is with career, because everything's changing so fast. When you're a musician, everything is constantly being, especially we're coming out with an album, everything's just kind of boom, 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 boom. And when you think you've kind of grasped one thing and understood one thing, it changes. And so it's hard to keep. Another thing I get on myself about is am I on top of everything enough? Like that's another dialogue I play with, but you just have to do your best and then put it down. So
what are some of those quickly changing things in the music industry, I guess, since you began, right? What have been some of the big pivots that you were like, man, like that really kind of shifted either how you create or how you present or how you do things?
The things that is really difficult, we don't have like a 9 to 5, I can be, have a text at like 9:00 at night. I need an answer on something by tomorrow, or like, do you want to play this show or this tour like 8 months from now?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know how I'm going to be feeling in 8 months.
Yeah.
Like I'm tired right now, but maybe I'll be good. Um, and those things change a lot. It's just very quick. It requires a lot of quick decisions on things, and that's kind of one of my struggles because I like to really take time with things and kind of, you know, somebody gives me an idea, I like to sit with it and see how it feels in my body for a couple of days before I'm like, yeah, let's roll with that. Um, so the hard thing too is, being an artist, we're constantly inspired by things like every single day. So
Yeah.
whereas like one moment I may be like, oh man, I'm really on this like acoustic like folk thing. The next day I might be like, man, I'm on this like reggae trip over here. So when you're planning your artistic, I guess, year, whether we're traveling like this, I may plan something for this summer, but then when I get to the summer, I'm already on something else, but I've already committed to this thing. So that's the hard part, I think, is everything is very quick. You have to make quick decisions, and you're also scheduling things so far out where by the time you get there, you've changed. Your mind has changed.
Yes. Yes.
So that's kind of difficult.
I can relate to that so much. Have you ever done your human design? Have you heard of this, or are you familiar with the system?
Human design, I think I've heard of it, but I've never done it, I don't think.
I'm all about this for like the last couple of years because it's a complex system, but one of the parts of the system tells you how your inner authority works, which really helps with that decision-making stuff. And
right.
my type is a manifesting generator. My inner authority is emotional authority. And what you're describing, I find myself in these situations a lot where I've committed to something. And then by the time it's really coming up, I've changed so much. And I'm like, oh, can I back out of it? But and in a lot of things in my work, I actually can. But I imagine a lot of things in your work where like hundreds or thousands of people have bought tickets to things. You really can't.
Yeah. That's definitely the thing. And then you start to maybe feel a little stuck.
Yeah.
And I don't like to feel stuck.
Yeah. So what
I haven't done the inner authority. What is it called? The
human design. I'll email your assistant afterwards.
I haven't
so
done
cool.
the human design, but I've, this last couple years, I've really gotten into astrology.
Yeah.
So it's one type of human design, and a lot of the new album is based off of astrology. So learning about my chart and how I think and my personality has definitely helped me, like you said, with making decisions and, learning just how I'm built,
Yes.
But it's difficult. Yeah, it's definitely difficult.
So how do you still show up fully to something that you're not like 100% down with anymore when you have to?
Well, one thing about myself I do have to say is I'm pretty disciplined. So even if I'm not down with something, and I've already committed to it, there's some side of me that's just like, okay, you just gotta like, put on your running shoes. And my father-in-law always says the hardest part about running is putting on your running shoes. It's like you just kind of have to like get in the mode and go. But that doesn't mean like I'm always present. I'll definitely admit to that. Some things I just check out while I'm doing it, while I'm playing or this and that. And it's hard to kind of get into the present moment when you're not feeling something. I'm the type of person where if I'm not feeling something, I'm like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't want to like fake it. I don't like, any BS, that type of thing. I like to be direct. So usually if I'm checked out, people will know that I'm checked out.
Yeah.
So I'm not really good at, but I do have that disciplined side of me where if I've committed to it, we just do it. And I don't know if there's like really a trick for it for me.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that makes sense. You're a human. We all check out at some point, like anyone in any given life. So I was also looking on your website, all the various artists that you've toured with. And this is just a geeky question, but do you have a favorite? Was there a specific show or a specific experience that you were like, maybe it inspired you creatively or it was just so fun?
Right. I've been so blessed to tour with so many different types of people, anywhere from like Stevie Nicks to like, Michael Franti to like the Wailers to, Matasiao, like it's been so varied. So it's hard for me to pick like I guess a favorite because I definitely learned so much from each person, especially with their different types of styles and
Yeah.
this type of thing. Um, but as far as like a favorite, tour or favorite show, we did a tour with Jimmy Cliff one time, and we played a show up in Quebec City, I remember, and I learned so much from him because he's so senior, he's older man, at this time, and he was just filled with electricity on stage. The guy never stopped moving, and the guy never stopped grabbing the crowd in the palm of his hand, and just like it was just incredible to watch every single night. And it just showed me the power of music and the power that music brings to the spirit if you allow it to. And it really inspired me, to also just know that music is endless. He's done so much in his career and he's still just pumping. And that was something that really moved me and was amazing to see, at his age. But yeah, everybody I learned so much from.
I love that. And I'm so curious, and maybe you relate to this or maybe you don't. I'm a very empathic and sensitive person, and I read a lot of the energies wherever I am. So I imagine if you're touring with people and if it's like their show and you're a guest or something, what is it like to have to go up as an artist, essentially on someone else's stage, for their people? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I actually really love it. I mean, I really enjoy that part because I like kind of going up there and being unknown, to these people. And then by the end of it, people, feeling connected, because I like seeing how music breaks down all those walls and all those barriers. And that's what's really fun, and, of course it's a blessing to go out on tour on your own and play your own shows, but, people, they know you and they expect something from you, they expect certain songs to be played or they expect a certain type of show. Whereas if you're opening for somebody, they don't know what to expect. And that's kind of exciting. So that's exciting for us too, because we also don't know what to expect. But to go out there and play and see the music do what it does and break down the walls is actually really fun for me. It's one of my funnest parts of being a musician is opening for people.
That's awesome. And so can you kind of walk me through? So for me personally, I don't know much about like how a music career evolves. And I'm sure for many of the people listening, they don't either. So what is that like? How do you like earn your stripes to even get to be a Trevor Hall who right now has a couple different albums and gets to release things on his own terms and do things differently?
Well, I think one thing that I've learned is like everybody's path is so different, even in life, everybody's path is different. And when I start comparing my path to other people's path, why isn't my path like that? It doesn't, it's just pointless. You get into trouble. And I think it's the same thing with life. We all have to understand that we're all on our own journeys. But my path, it wasn't straight and steady. It was, I signed a big music deal when I was really, really young, as a senior in high school, and to this major label, and kind of got thrown into LA, 18 years old, didn't know anybody, and had all these different record people telling me how I should sound and what type of album I should make. And, being so young, your mind is so, it's not, formed that much yet. So I was taking in, all these different people's opinions of how I should sound. And as a consequence, I think I kind of lost my identity a little bit and what type of artist I wanted to be. And then, I think the tradition, the straight path, I guess, is people, they sign a record deal and they record an album, and then the album comes out and the record company support like this. Well, it didn't happen that way for me. I recorded an album, and then there was a change of I get management, you could say, within the record company. So a new president came in. That album got shelved, and they wanted me to record a brand new album. So I recorded another album. Then I got dropped. That album didn't come out. I got dropped from the label. So over the course of 3 or 4 years, I had no music that came out. And
But you recorded 2 albums.
I recorded 2 albums, but they shelved them. They own that because I signed.
So you couldn't do anything with
I couldn't do anything with it.
Albums.
No.
Wow.
No. So it's really frustrating because, you have all these people that are telling you, hey, we're ready for music. When are you going to give us some new music?
Yeah.
And I had the music, but because of these people up in these offices that knew nothing about me, and nothing about my path, they were withholding that. So that was a big lesson for me.
Yeah.
So then I got dropped from that label. I had to kind of start from scratch. And then we started putting out albums finally. And just kept touring and grinding away. It wasn't a straight path. I've never really had like a big radio hit, that can kind of really propel an artist, to the forefront. It was definitely a slow, and it is still a slow, just grind, which I think is good, in some ways. When I look back on my musical path and journey, I don't think my mind was ready to kind of handle. If I did get famous or blow up, I think it would have really kind of destroyed me. So I think that there was a guardian angel or spirit kind of protecting me and keeping me humble. So that's how my path went. But like I said, not everybody's path goes that way.
Yeah. Well, and you make a good point that if someone does get a big radio hit, all of a sudden it's like, it's like someone on YouTube, their video goes viral. Even I think of over the course of the last few years, I don't know why this is what's popping into my head as the example, but do you remember that lady who put on the Chewbacca mask and she was making a video in her car? Like,
no, I don't remember it, but I have to see it.
Oh my God. All of a sudden, I'll add that. I'll email your assistant all these things. The Chewbacca lady, human design. But it's so fascinating. And then all of a sudden, you're a person that someone knows. And obviously, the lady wearing the Chewbacca mask didn't have anything to follow it up with. But for a musician, it's like, oh, wow. All of a sudden, last week I was grinding. And this week, I'm all over everything, everywhere. Everyone, probably the shows are calling and things like that.
Yeah.
So super fascinating to think in that industry. All it takes is one, boop.
Yeah, it really
Like
does.
wildfire.
Yeah, exactly. And, they say overnight, things, and it's really true. I think something happens and, within a few days, it just blows up. So, some people have that, some people don't, but that's kind of the beauty, I think, of being an artist too, is, everybody has their own path and everybody's destiny is different.
Yeah.
So.
And, it's funny, you said the overnight thing. One of my earlier mentors, when I started running my own business, her name is Marie Forleo, and she has this amazing quote that says, if you want to be an overnight success, you have to be an everyday hustler.
Yeah, that's a good quote.
Because even though the thing that propels them happened overnight, they were working like you.
Exactly.
You did 4 years, 2 albums, and you couldn't even have any of that.
Yeah.
So interesting and a great perspective for anyone listening, no matter what their career or their path or what thing they're putting that in the frame of. And also, too, you're not necessarily in like a mainstream genre. How would you describe where you've landed now?
It's so funny. I've been asked that question for 15 years. I still can't describe my music.
Well, there was a little quick term on your website. It said conscious something.
Yeah, well, that's changed a lot. I'm a musician that is inspired by so many different genres that all those genres make their way into my music. So it's kind of hard to say, oh, I'm a rock artist or I'm a reggae artist or a folk artist, because I get inspired by, new things all the time. This new album that's coming out as we speak is very kind of alternative and it's kind of experiments with so many different sounds, whereas the one just before that was very simple and very folk and very, so it's just kind of the kick that I'm on, you know.
Yeah.
So I try not to give it any boundaries because I just want that energy that's coming through to speak in the way that it wants to speak. I don't want to hinder it in any kind of way. That's kind of my attitude towards music and my path towards music. So I think some people may say like, oh, that's, because we can't define you, it's hard to like,
Yeah.
I can understand that argument, but I don't care. That's not my path. And
I love that.
yeah,
I'm 100%
yeah,
with you. There's, in my line of work, people will say, until you're something, you're nothing. Meaning, like, until you have a niche or until you know who, like, your ideal customer avatar or your target audience is,
right.
then, like, if we can't define you. But I really appreciate that you said that, because I think we're living in a time where the most important thing we can do is define ourselves and
Right.
say, you dig it or you don't. And people will phase, even people who listen to the show, they phase
Right.
in and out. We recently, at the time of recording this interview, this change in the title to Truth Telling with Elizabeth D'Alto just happened because we're recording this at the end of January.
Uh-huh.
But it used to be called Untamed the Wild Soul. And I'm sure we lost listeners who really still wanted it to be Untamed the Wild Soul.
Right.
And I actually got a couple messages from people that said, ooh, I'd actually stop listening, but I think I'll come back now because this sounds
Right.
interesting. So I think
Right.
that's part of the evolution of our culture, is that we get to say who we are instead of
Right.
trying to comply with who we think we should be so more people like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's important. I think that when you look in any area, the people that are like highly successful or influential are the people that are who they are. They're the people that stuck to their person and their being no matter what. Those are the people that really, I think, make a difference, So it's important for all of us to be our own individual selves and express our creativity, whatever is coming, even if it changes. We have to follow the energy, and because if we just try to cater to everybody, we all know that doesn't work. So I don't know why we keep trying to do that.
It's old programming.
It's so funny. Yeah, it's programming. Yeah.
So the most recent album is an unconventional release. Can you talk about that?
Yeah.
What's unconventional about it?
Well, it's our first independent release. So in that sense, we had a lot more freedom to release the album the way we wanted to do it. We could do anything we want, really, to speak in simple terms. And, the music industry has changed so much, especially in the last few years, I remember when I bought my new computer, my MacBook, there's no CD drive on it anymore. Yeah. It's like people aren't even really using CDs anymore. People are buying their music. It went from CDs to buying their music off iTunes.
Yeah.
And now it's gone from iTunes, people obviously still use iTunes, but to streaming. Now everybody's using Spotify and Apple Music, all these things. It's constantly changing. And those days of, I think, going out and buying an album, a CD, and coming home and putting it in your car or on your thing and listening to it straight through, those days are, I think, kind of slowly fading. Our attention span is not where it was. So as an artist, when I released albums in the past, I've noticed that, we release a full album, whatever, 12, 13 songs. And, a lot, most people maybe don't even make it through the whole album.
Yeah.
And then also some songs get lost because other songs overshadow other songs and all this stuff. So it's kind of a bummer, because you put so much energy into these songs. And it's not that they're bad songs. It's just that the way it's released, it's a lot of content at once.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do something where each song got its proper space, and each no songs were kind of overshadowing other songs, and we wanted it to be this. And also, when we release an album, there's like hype about the album for like 2 months, and then it's over.
Yeah.
So we wanted to keep the conversation going. So what we did with this album, The Fruitful Darkness, we broke it up into 4 parts, and there's about 3 songs per part. And there's like a month or two in between each part. So, part one's released, you have 3 songs, you're able to live with those 3 songs for a good month too. And then you have another part comes out, a new 3 songs. And then after a few months, part 3 is coming out in just a week or something like this. So that way, this dialogue, this conversation of the album is continuing for longer than just, a month or so.
Yeah.
And also each part, we're really able to make sure the listener hears each song before moving on to the new one. So it's a risk, we're taking it's a new path, but I really enjoy it. It's really fun for me because I get to release new music, every few months, and it's very exciting when that happens. So it's unconventional in that sense that we've broken the album up. We're not releasing it all at one time, and we're spacing it out over a year.
I think this is genius because you're so right. I even just the other day, there was this one song that I heard of because it was on the Jimmy Fallon show, and I'm like, oh, I like that song. So you're right. I went to Spotify, and I was like, let me listen to that song. Let me check out the rest of the album. I listened to like a little bit of a couple more songs, but I didn't like any of them nearly as much. So like, that's it. I'm going to hear one full song from that album.
That's how it goes. I mean, I do the same thing. When somebody comes out with an album, I don't like play it from number one and like lie down on my, bed and listen to the whole thing. I take a little bit at a time, and so it's important as artists, we have to adapt to the times and the way things are happening. So it was our kind of response to that, and we're just trying it out.
I love this. And have you noticed, like, is there any way to track or measure the response and how, if people are engaging more fully with the songs the way you intended than if you had just released a whole album at once?
Right. Well, through streaming and stuff, it's funny because the part 1, we're able to obviously see how many times the song was streamed through Spotify and all this stuff. And part 1 came out September, I think, those first 3 songs. And those 3 songs are already within our top 10 on our most played on Spotify, out of 5, 6 albums. So I don't know if that's because, there was more focus. People were able to just kind of focus in on the songs, or if they just really like the songs, whatever it was. But it'll be the interesting part, or the part that I'm most interested about, is when, summer comes along and we release the full album in its entirety, in its final, to see what happens then, because people will already have heard the parts, but what does that mean for the full album? Will it hurt that album, or will it benefit? And I was really willing to take that risk, so it'll just be interesting to see.
That is so cool. Again, thinking out of the box. And now, has anyone else done anything like this, or was this like your idea and you're the first one trying this?
I don't know if anybody else has tried it. I mean, of course, people, these days, I kind of got the idea from like, people release like singles these days.
Yeah.
They release on iTunes or Spotify. They release like 2 songs, like, oh, these 2 singles. They're not a part of any album, but they're just like, we're just releasing it. A lot of like hip hop artists will do that, or like DJs, will do that. And I thought, man, I think this is really cool because we can just like focus on one thing. And I think that there could be something here. Like, what happens if I did this with the whole album? So I don't know if anybody's done it like this with the full album, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is where it's going to go.
That is super interesting to consider. Quick break in the show to invite you to join the waitlist for a free tool that I've been working on here behind the scenes for a couple of months now called the Trust Assessment. If you're new to the show, you might not know that trust is something that threads through every single thing I do and every single thing that I create. And if you've been listening for a while, you definitely already know that. Trust is the number one problem people don't know they have. The level of trust that you have in yourself and in life affects everything, and that's not an exaggeration. If you head on over to wildsoulmovement.com/trust-waitlist, you will be placed on the waitlist to know as soon as the trust assessment is available, which will be on or around March 5th. if you're listening in real time. What you'll get when you complete the assessment is a free personalized trust score, a breakdown of how your current level of trust could be impacting your life, plus stress-free recommendations for what you can do about it. And again, like I mentioned, trust is a problem that a lot of people don't even know they have. So if you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if this applies to me, there's only one way to find out. Take the assessment. Again, the link is wildsoulmovement.com/trust-waitlist. Now back to the show. So I love, again, I was geeking out on the website a little bit, and this line jumped out to me about this most recent album, The Fruitful Darkness, conveys the vulnerability of journeying through the unknown. Mm-hmm. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, but in the context of the album, is it like, are you telling a story throughout the songs, or how did you convey that vulnerability through the album?
Well, yeah, the Fruitful Darkness, I mean, it has a lot to do with what we were talking about earlier about the surrender, but the album is really inspired by the last couple years of my life. I was going through a period, they call it your Saturn return. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what this term meant or anything like this, but and it can be a very difficult time if you're not familiar with Saturn return, or a time of change, or, Saturn's the planet of lessons, so you can learn a lot. But in the beginning of my Saturn return, I was definitely going through a great deal of things with my health, my body, questioning a lot of things that I kind of staked my identity on. I felt like they were kind of falling away and didn't really know. I was like, oh God, who am I really, Mm-hmm. And just as, like I said, time, it just arranges everything perfectly. I came in contact with this astrologer named Deborah Silverman, who read my chart, and she was like, wow, this is really interesting that, we're having this reading right now because you're just going into your Saturn return. And I was like, oh, well, what is that? And she was telling me what it meant, and also what it meant for me, because everybody's Saturn return is different. And my Saturn return had a lot to do with finding out who I am, in my truest sense, and really self-discovery, this type of thing. And with that, a lot of things that, like I said, I staked my identity on, they were kind of falling away. And I realized I had kind of built up this identity for myself, but I don't know how much of it was true and false. And that can be really scary. And when you're trying to find out who you are, you're kind of wading through this darkness. But it's not a bad darkness. It's a darkness that is waiting to be discovered, that's waiting to be brought to light, that contains so many lessons within it, and so many metaphors and ideas within it. And I feel like in our culture, especially in our Western culture, we've kind of learned as, growing up, that if there's anything bad or this type of thing, we should just kind of should shove it under the rug. We should just kind of put it away and not talk about it. And, that pattern, I think, has kind of stayed with a lot of us, when really the things that scare us the most, the things that we don't really want to face, if we turn towards them, if we befriend them, if we ask them, hey, what are you trying to tell me? They can really bring out or teach us our greatest lessons, and really complete our person, and really bring us into our truest selves. So the Fruitful Darkness is the album, it's kind of, and also just the term, the Fruitful Darkness, is that journey into that space. And, in different cultures, I'm very influenced by India and Nepal. In Nepal, they have the shamans, the jankris there. That's the shamanic journey, is going into the dark and bringing that darkness to the light. That's the medicine. That's the healing. That's the whole point of going on that journey, is that discovery. So it's kind of like, my own, I guess, shamanic journey into myself, and realizing that we shouldn't shy away from the things that scare us, because those things are really our teachers. And like I said before, I like to be straight. I don't like to beat around the bush. So I'm definitely somebody who wants the truth and is definitely a truth seeker. And the Fruitful Darkness is kind of learning about my own truth and going in and finding out who I really am in essence, what am I? So that's the album.
And as you were going through that Saturn return, I'm really curious, how did it impact, to whatever comfort level you want to share, because again, personal question, how did it impact the relationships and the people around you who were not going through a Saturn return?
I don't think it really impacted them, or I may be wrong, but I don't think it was in a negative way. I think it was in a very beautiful, raw way. When we see somebody, a loved one or a friend that is really like vulnerable and just raw, like there's a certain beauty there. There's a certain depth, there's, like I said, there's no really fakeness around it. It's just kind of, you're just in it, the joy and the suffering is what makes us who we are, makes us our beings. Our problem is we just want to, the pendulum swings. We just want the pendulum to stay over on the joy side.
Yeah.
But really that suffering, all of our scars are what make us, this beautiful person that we are. So, my near and dear ones, my family, my friends, I think they were so loving and supportive through that time. I mean, I would definitely not been able to do it without them, but it was cool for us to drop in together and go on the journey together, and I think they saw the growth happening within me, and they were the ones that kept reminding me about the growth, because when you're kind of going through it, it's kind of hard to see where you are.
Yeah.
So I think it made my relationships deeper. I really do, with the important people, and the things that weren't important, they just fell off. And I think that's part of the medicine. That's part of the journey.
Cool. So I want to jam on creative process a little bit.
Yeah.
So, and I can really relate to you even in my own work. I'm inspired by, I want to write about that. I want to do a Sunday sermon about that. I want to interview this person. There's all these different ideas and inspirations happening and coming through all the time. But then there needs to be a little bit of temperance, a little bit of patience, a little bit of timing, because you can't just put everything out all at once because of all the moving pieces and parts. And also so you don't confuse and overwhelm people. Right. So as someone who you were saying earlier, has so much inspiration rather, and information coming through, how do you cultivate that temperance, and how do you play with things and really capitalize on the inspiration? I don't know if it's possible to miss it or lose it, but does this question make sense?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, my creative process is all about getting out of my own way, and I think that's why music is such medicine to me, is because I'm not thinking anymore. I'm just listening. I'm listening to the song that's singing to me, that's singing me. I don't really look at myself as a singer, because the music is really coming to me, singing me, and so it's a process of getting out of the way for me. And that process, it has a mind of its own. 4-5 months can go by without me writing anything or this or that, and then there'll be like a week where it's just like, oh my God, I wrote like 12 songs. Or it can be more regular. Every day I have some idea and I put it down like this. But my attitude is I don't try to think at all. And because I don't want to put myself on that energy. I want the energy to be as pure as possible. I don't try to reason about it. I don't try to think, oh, does this make sense? Or, are people going to understand this? I don't. I just let it come out.
Cool.
And, with that being said, I don't try to, if I have an idea, I don't try to hinder it. So if I want to do a series of paintings, for instance. If the idea is there, I go for it. But then at the same time, if am inspired to write this type of music, I go for it. And then once it's all together, I find that it usually just finds its own way. Whatever is meant to come to the people, whatever is meant to come out, it all comes out at the proper time. I think that I do believe that the energy has a life of its own, and that if it needs to be shared, it'll be shared, and it'll become clear to me what is more, I guess, not pressing, but what is more necessary at the time than another thing. So with my creative process, I don't try to hinder anything at all. Whatever's coming through, I just follow it, and then when it comes through, that's when I start thinking about, okay, what's wants to come out now, and how are we gonna do that, and et cetera, like this.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking how amazing it is to just purely be an artist in the lane of being an artist, because I'm sure we have people listening who have all kinds of creative endeavors, but they're also a mom, and they go to their 9-to-5 job, and they can't do the surrender the way you do the surrender. Like 4 or 5 months goes by and they're not doing anything. Like there's going to be some problems. So it's cool to get the perspective of someone who's just like purely in that lane and can really give themselves up to that. And I appreciate that as well, because it's something that I've thought about, as a relatively young single person. I don't have a family. I'm not in a relationship right now. Like I have a lot more freedom right now than even a lot of our listeners, but that's not a reason to be disconnected. That's a reason to go, look at how much I have available to be able to do and give and serve that maybe other people might not, but can actually help a ton of people.
Exactly. Yeah. I hear that for sure. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to be an artist and be able to support your life and have the time to wait for that voice to come through. But speaking to people that don't have that time doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's just a matter of, I think, like finding your way and like prioritizing when that voice comes through. I mean, even me, who I am a full-time artist, I'm also busy. Like I have things to deal with, the business and running around and stuff and travel, or if I'm visiting family. But if something's happening, if that voice starts talking, I find the time, I put it down, I put everything down, I find the time. Even if it's just writing a few lines in my little journal, it's important to honor the voice when it comes, because if we continue to not recognize it, it's going to go somewhere else. Or it's going to be suppressed, and then it's going to turn into something else, maybe not so healthy. So, if people that don't have a lot of, I guess, time, doesn't mean that it's impossible. It's just a matter of finding what works for you and learning to release that.
There's a book called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. And in it, he talked about, surrendering to the muse. But he also says, I happen to notice that if I sit down every morning to write, the muse shows up most mornings. So even like having a little discipline and like carving out whatever time someone does have, I mean, the inspiration will come it's kind of the 100%. Thing that where you meet it halfway, right?
Yeah. I think that's really helpful. For me, it's harder if it's not flowing through, but I think coming from his point of view, at least we're working that muscle. At least we're, even if it's nothing, there's so many things that come through that are like, just in my mind, crap, and I ignore them. But at least it's working. I'm working, so I hear that.
So I love to ask just some kind of silly, casual, not super deep or important questions at the end of the interview.
I love it. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Are you a big reader? Do you read books?
I love reading books.
Are you reading anything right now?
I just got done with more of a we call it like a vrat, which means like a, how do you say, like a vow. But I was reading this the Ramayana, the Tulsidas Ramayana, which is a sacred scripture from India, and there you can it's broken up in 30 days. So you usually read it from full moon to full moon. So I ended yesterday. So I did that for the new year to start the new year. But it's a sacred story of the gods and like this in India. And they say that the story, by reading it, it purifies your mind and your heart. And so it's a kind of a good start. But right now I am reading a book called Bodies of Song, which is by this professor named Linda Hess. And I'm a big fan of Kabir. Kabir was a 15th century mystic from India, a poet, singer. And she's a scholar of Kabir. And she just came out with this book called Bodies of Song, where she kind of follows different singers of that tradition around India. And it's really cool for me because I'm so into Kabir. But yeah, that's what I'm reading now. I'm also reading a lot of poetry. I'm really into Nayyirah Waheed, and who isn't right now? But we've been reading Salt a lot. Her new book Salt, and it's just the words are just so powerful.
She uses so few words to say so much.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's just full. That's when you know that somebody is so talented, you know?
Yeah.
She's just so powerful, and you can feel her just like Khaleesi, like, you know, queen spirit, you know? So yeah, I've been reading a lot of her poetry and stuff like this.
Cool. And what are you listening to that's not your own music?
I am listening to a lot of it's funny, like I'm listening to a lot of like electronic music right now. Like I love like Odessa, and I love Bonobo, and gosh, who else am I listening to? Big Wild, I've just been kind of getting into a little bit. But I listen to a lot of this band called Midnight, which is Midnite. It's a reggae band from St. Croix. And the singer is just he has such this just deep rooted vibe to him. So it's hard not to not listen to them because it's just so grounded and so heavy. I love that type of music. It's very meditative, like almost like a trance music. That's so fun. Yeah, that's kind of my thing right now.
And do you watch any TV or movies?
Oh God, I don't know if I should answer this question.
Why?
Because I'm trying to like do the whole spiritual thing, but I'm the biggest junk TV watcher.
Are you?
Ever.
But I think this is important for people to know.
No, it's not. I got a persona to keep up.
You don't have to tell us what you watch if you don't want to.
No, it's okay. I'm not scared.
You're a little scared.
I'm like I've always been into movies ever since a little boy. I love TV. I love really crap TV. Because, you know, when you're, and I think for me, it's just like I'm dealing with like a lot of heavy things in my mind. Yeah. You know, that I just love to just like zone out and, you know, watch.
You need a break sometimes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love stuff like Vanderpump Rules.
Really? That is crap TV.
It's so crap. Oh, even you. See? Oh, God. Now I feel
I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, like, it is.
No,
it's
you
junk.
judged me there.
No, I didn't.
Yeah,
I was surprised. No, I have a friend she's been on the show. I won't say who it is, but she does some of the most deep healing priestess work with people. And she loves like Housewives, Nashville, like you gotta, I don't think this is not in the persona. I think this
I'll watch anything though, but I love Vanderpump Rules. One of my favorite shows was Top Chef.
Yes.
And
Chopped?
the new season.
You watch Chopped?
No, I don't watch Chopped as much. I for some reason I love Top Chef. The new season's in Denver, and we live in Colorado, so it's kind of cool to see like, you know, where they are. We just watched this crazy documentary on Netflix called The Keepers. And it's about this nun who was murdered in like 1967. and the murder is still unsolved.
Okay.
And it kind of goes back, and a lot of things are uncovered. I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but it's very, very good. Very good. I like a lot of like murder mystery type stuff too.
I love detective shows, so I'm all about that stuff.
Yeah. Are you a Scorpio?
I'm Virgo.
Oh, okay. Because that's the detectives like that Scorpio energy. So, yeah, I like that show. What else do we watch? We watch so much stuff. It's so, yeah. I've said too much. I've said too much.
I'm going to get a note from your people later. Like, can we edit out that last part where you talked about TV?
That part out? Yeah. Can we cut that out? No, it's good.
It's really, but for people listening, again, it's called Truth Telling with Elizabeth DiAlto. And this is about embodying like all of the truths, right? Like as humans, we're so dynamic. We're so complex. Someone could be deeply spiritual and deeply human and like Vanderpump Rules. And there's nothing wrong with that. And if someone's going to judge that, that is actually not spiritual to judge that there's this part of you that also likes Real Housewives, whatever.
Yeah, tell them. That's what's up. That's what's up. Back me up here.
I got it. I got you. And I reference this. People have heard me say this all the time. I interviewed, do you know who David G is? Have you ever heard of him?
Yeah, David G.
He looks like Santa Claus. He teaches meditation. He's amazing.
I've heard, yeah.
He has all these books. And, you know, when he was on the podcast, he had shared that. This was a couple years ago. He's like, people would probably be surprised, but I like to consume about 3 or 4 hours of television a day. I was like, right on, David G. Thanks for the permission.
Yeah. Big ups to David G.
David G. So tell people your website so they could go find all your tour dates and what you're up to.
Yeah, our website's trevorhallmusic.com, and our Instagram is the same, Trevor Hall Music, and our Facebook is, I think our Facebook's just Trevor Hall.
Cool. And they can find you. It's easy to spell. We'll put links to everything in the show notes as well. Cool. And I've never been to one of your live shows, but a good friend of mine has been to several. You're like her favorite.
Oh,
so
cool.
For anyone listening.
Where are you at?
I'm in LA. I'm in Malibu now.
Oh, okay. Yeah, when we come through there, you have to come see us.
We'll come see. And but I've heard great show, awesome energy, super fun. So for anyone listening, I know you have a ton of tour dates going to be all over North America, or are you going other places too?
We're doing North America in a couple weeks. We're just doing a storyteller tour for a couple weeks. All the summer, we're Canada, Europe, we're bouncing around quite a bit. So you just have to keep an eye on it.
Amazing. Well, everyone keep an eye on it. Check out Trevor, check out his music. Now you know he's a real person that also watches Netflix like the rest of us. So Trevor, thank you so much. Have a good one.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
When I was creating my program, my first program, what I did was it was like reverse engineering. Yeah. I figured out, how did I get brainwashed in the first place, you know? And then I compared a healthy home versus an unhealthy home. And I began to understand, children from healthy homes feel seen. I never felt seen. Children from healthy homes are allowed to express their emotions. I never had that, you know? Mm-hmm. It's okay to be angry in an unhealthy home. You're taught life skills. It's okay to make a mistake. You know, parents are supposed to be inquisitive about your day. You know, how do you feel? What do you think? What happened today? So I began to understand what was missing. And then I understood that I had to give that to myself. That was part of my reprogramming process, you know?